Well, we were talking about just before we really get started with the show. We're in your restaurant, which is one of the coolest restaurants I have ever seen.
Thank
and
you.
I've seen a few, but it's. Can we just talk about the space a bit? How did it come about? And it's 7 years old, right? The restaurant?
7 years. It'll be 7 years next month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember. So why I was the head chef at Noma? I'd given Renee my 1 year notice before I was leaving. And
just to stop on that, how long were you at Noma, and when did you start?
I was at Noma for a total of 5 years.
5 years.
I stopped end of February 2013.
Okay.
So I had given my 1 year notice, and I was stopping end of February 2013, and I said to myself, I'm going to take 1 year off.
Yeah.
I'd save some money. I'm going to take 1 year off and just kind of rediscover what I really loved about food and restaurants. And because when you are the head chef for someone else, your goal is to be that person creatively, organizationally, and just like really anticipate what they're going to do before they do it. And so you're in a very specific mind space. And so I wanted just to get out of that. And so I said, I'm going to take a year. And so I planned some trips, and then literally March, it's like the third week of March, I was out walking around out here. And when I lived in New York, I spent a lot of time down in like Red Hook before it was Red Hook now.
Sure.
When it was this kind of really post-industrial, big warehouses everywhere. And I love that feeling of like something used to happen here, but now is kind of desolate and kind of run down. And so when I found Ref Saloon, that was this place. And I was walking around out here, and I just walked by the window, and I was like, holy shit, look at this place, man. It's just empty. And every single surface in this space was operating room white. Like the stairs, the walls, the ceilings, the floor, it was like a sterile white space.
What was it before you took over?
Well, the original, so before us, it was office building.
Okay.
But before that, it was part of the shipyard that we're in right now. And this particular building has a bit of a dark past. So it was the kind of the tool and uniform depot for the shipbuilders. So they would come in, collect their tools and uniforms here. And the unions were so strong in the shipyards that you could not get fired. And if you were maimed or somehow lost an arm or leg, or you would be sent to work here because you couldn't work at your production space post anymore. And so amongst the shipyard, the nickname of this building was the Death Cave.
Wow. Well, I mean, you're killing some animals around, so there's that.
So I saw this space. I looked inside, and I was like, wow. So I contacted the landlords, and I asked them if it was available, and they're like, actually, someone is looking at it right now. I won't say who that is because it was another restaurant-focused person. And I said, listen, this is my story. This is what I want to do. I think it would be worth your time to rethink signing that contract with this other person. I think we can do something really special out here with a garden, and so it's just not a production kitchen.
Yeah.
And they went back and forth, and then they said, okay, let's talk about it. Well,
yeah, because maybe for people who don't know Copenhagen that well or Denmark that well, we're in the capital city, but this part of Copenhagen 7 years ago was...
I mean, we opened, and right outside the windows right here, in the middle of service, we'd have a full dining room of people eating, and there were some dudes that would just pull up, sit right in front of the window, and just start smoking weed. Like dudes you don't tell to leave.
No.
And at first I was like, the first couple times I was like, fuck, this sucks. But then I kind of was like, actually, this is cool because these people who are eating dinner here are going to go home and tell that story, and that's going to be so ingrained in their experience.
Yeah.
And there's just been, I mean, it's a bit of the Wild West out here.
Yeah.
Like just weird shit happens out here that you're not expecting.
And I think what's interesting, because I'm new to Copenhagen compared to you. I mean, I moved here now a couple of years ago, and I just like Ref Saloon, like this spot, because I mean, you're here down the road. There's, a bunch of other awesome places, bakeries,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's just becoming,
Yeah.
and it's still becoming. It's not done.
2
right?
years ago was
Yeah.
right around when it started to kind of, you could see it.
Yeah.
People, because I remember when we moved out here, all my friends who had restaurants were like, "You're crazy. You're gonna fail.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, it's so far away. It's not that far away.
No.
It's so far away." And now I have people calling me, "Dude, is there any spaces out there? Do you know the landlords? Can you introduce me to the landlords?" So I think we our foresight has paid off, and
Yeah.
we have a space that you can never have this space in the city. We have a garden, a 1 hectare garden
Amazing.
that is like, it's a sanctuary out here.
So, I mean, you said that 7 years ago you left Noma and you sort of were looking at what you wanted to do next. And why this place? Why Amass? Where did that come about? And I think because we're in the middle of this pandemic,
Yeah.
it's a good time to look back maybe, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's all I've been doing over the last like 2 months is looking back and not because I'm trying to attach myself to the past, but because I think there's valuable lessons that you learn in the past that maybe you forget that when you move past them.
Yeah.
And I've been looking for those key things within Amass that were really special, that really gave value to the space and really made us feel good about what we were doing, and just revisiting those, because when you revisit something like that in a different mind frame, when you've grown and you have more knowledge, then those experiences actually become more valuable, and you value them way more.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, if we touch on why Amass, why here, I think that, back to this, for me, when you go to a restaurant in the city, you walk down the same street you walk down every day. And up until you enter the front door of the restaurant, your experience is the same that you have every single day. So by building a restaurant out here, and your experience doesn't start when you walk in the door of the restaurant, your experience starts when you walk out of the door of your apartment or your hotel room. It's a journey out here, and I remember I would say 80% of Copenhageners who came to Amass when we first opened had never been to Refshallen. I mean, I lived in Copenhagen for 5 years before I ever came to Refshallen, because there was nothing out here. And then all of a sudden, people started coming out here. And I mean, I remember when Christer from La Banquina, he's like, "Hey, I thinking about opening a cafe out there." I was like, "You're fucking crazy." And then I was like, "Wait, everyone said that to me when I."
yeah.
And look at, he's like, I mean, that is a genius business model over there.
I mean, I can't. I have a baby now, so we don't get out as much. It's just frustrating with all these tourists and Danish people who, when the sun's out, everyone goes to La Banquina, and it's like jumping in the water and sort of having the wine. And I mean, it's just. It's almost like this has become a postcard for Copenhagen now.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like,
it's definitely
sort of this area and everything that's happening here. You also have Empirical Spirits down the road.
Empirical Spirits down the road. I mean, Alchemist. You got Refin going on. I mean, it's becoming this. It's funny because all the businesses on this island that are making the island have some kind of standing or visual identity are all food based.
Yeah, exactly.
But they only probably make up 20% of the businesses out here. There are a lot of businesses out here. Yeah,
exactly. I want to touch on the garden a bit, because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What was the idea with the garden, and what are you doing with it right now? Because you showed us also you grow your own. I don't know how to say it right. You grow your own fish.
Well, the fish are used in the aquaponic system to grow the plants.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
And so I mean, the garden started out as 500 square meters, and for the first 3 years of the restaurant, I was the only one that mowed the lawn, because it was like my stress release. But then it started to stress me out because I didn't have time to do it. But during those 3 years, I added about a half a meter onto the garden. I'm a big fan of ask for forgiveness, not permission. Exactly. And before you know it, we had a greenhouse, and it was infinitely bigger, twice as big as it was before. And the landlords have been cool about it. They actually sent me an email last year, and they're like, "We see what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's fine, but stop."
You pushed it enough.
Yeah, we've pushed it. And I thanked them for that. I was like, "Thank you very much."
The restaurants industry's changed like no other industry in the past few months. And I mean, when the pandemic hit, in the early weeks, it was kind of this Chinese thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like, oh yeah, it's happening in China.
Yeah.
A bunch of friends who have companies out there and work in factories out there, and they were like, yeah, it's tough here, but it's in Wuhan.
Yeah.
We don't care about that,
Yeah.
even in neighboring regions.
Yeah.
And then we were in India, and I was getting a little worried about. I'm like, this is getting a little
That's right,
stressful.
because you had gone with the family,
Yeah,
right?
We went to
I
India with the
remember.
family, and because we were talking about some interesting stuff,
Yeah.
which hopefully we'll get to do at some point.
Yeah.
And during our trip there is when things started getting a little crazier. We started hearing of more cases, and I'm a very how do I put it? Not stressful person, but I'm obsessed with stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
I get into it.
Yeah.
So I downloaded all these apps and started following all these doctors all over the world. And I'm like, guys, this is serious. This is going to be crazy. We got back home to Denmark, and a week later, the government shut everything down. So for me, it was, and the first people I thought about were all my friends in the restaurant industry, because I work in tech and I run startups. I advise companies. Most of the work that we do can be done from home.
Yeah.
Without much. I mean, there's of course some issues, but we're in a restaurant where people have to feed other people and work together. I mean, this virus must have hit you personally and the industry like a ton of bricks.
Those first few weeks were surreal because no one knew what was happening. It was, at that point in time, no one knew much about the virus, and everyone just knew it was spreading. No one knew long-term effects. No one knew really how it was spreading as in depth as they do now. And it was just like, okay, everything's shut. And I mean, we were at a point where, okay, we had a service on Thursday night, and it was that day they had said, okay, this is happening. They hadn't shut restaurants yet. I think they shut restaurants maybe a week and a half later. But it was at that point we said, okay, we'll do service on Friday night. Let's see. And then I kind of woke up Friday morning and I was like, we're not doing service on Friday night. We're not doing service tonight. This is serious. Like, this is if anybody can contribute in a way, it's shutting down your restaurant to mitigate human contact and potentially spread of the disease, the virus. And so I called the staff up and I said, everyone come in, we're going to have a meeting. We're shutting down, and we're going to just focus on shutting down the restaurant today and getting everything shut down.
And when that was
that was
3 months ago, 2 months ago?
That was the 12th of May, I think. Or 11th maybe.
Yeah.
And then it was just like everyone left that night, and I didn't have any information to give them. I didn't, and then I just spent literally the next 3 weeks, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day on the phone with lawyers and accountants trying to figure out what is going to happen.
Yeah, because I mean, we've seen in the news in the US a lot, because there's a lot of, the US has been hit a lot worse in some ways.
Yeah. They've also gotten a lot less help.
Exactly, from the government as well.
Yeah.
And I think we should talk about both those things, because you of course see all the chefs like Dave Chang, all the other ones you see on TV and in the news who talk about laying off people, and I mean, there's of course, the restaurant industry is very people heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a service, right?
Yeah.
So how has it been for you in terms of those aspects? And because Amass as a group, you have a few things going on besides just the restaurant. And what has happened since the pandemic, and what have you had to deal with?
I mean, I think so we have Amass, Braun and Build, the brewery, and then research space. And there came a point where everything falls under one company, and so if one of those legs is draining liquidity, it ultimately starts draining it from the other,
of course,
appendages. So we actually came to a point where Amass is very much a startup. We were 1 year old when this happened, and we had definitely learned a lot in that 1 year, and we were on a trajectory to kind of get over that kind of 1 year hump when you could start making money finally. And this thing hit, and it just hit us when we were the most vulnerable. Like, if it would have hit 3 months later, we might have had a chance, but it hit like we had just reopened after going through this big thing with this legal battle with the floors that were installed, and we had lost income, all that. And
I mean, the reason we connected, our mutual friend was
Susie.
Susie. She was running the place.
Exactly.
And I remember also just like the level of stress on her face every day.
Man,
I was like,
it was hard. And then this happened, and it was just like, okay, that was the nail in the coffin right there.
Yeah.
We could not recover without potentially compromising Amass. And I mean, it's no secret, Amass is my baby, so so that was kind of my priority. And there just came a point where my lawyer and my accountant said, listen, you got to pick one or the other right now. We don't have the liquidity, because it's not now this was happening. Like Broaden and Build could be open right now, but this is like November, December, when everything slows down, especially in Scandinavia, and people kind of hunker back up into their apartments, and that's the scary time. And that's what I'm hoping everyone in the restaurant industry here realizes, that it's all hunky-dory now, and people have been on lockdown, and they're coming out, and they're eating, and that's not to say, I mean, we're still operating Amass at a limited capacity because of the rules and restrictions in place, which it should be there. I'm not arguing that. But that means that we're actually not taking the income that we need to have a positive year.
Yeah.
So this liquidity that's in our bank account, that we're fortunate enough to have from Broaden and Build by shutting it down, that's the liquidity that's going to carry us through the darker, slower months. And I hope that most restaurateurs in this region, or I mean in general in the world, are looking 6 months ahead for that time, because there's also potentially a recession that's going to follow this, and that's all that's being talked about, and we just need to be ready to not be as kind of fruitful as it is right now.
I mean, this takes me back a little bit to, I love, it might not show right now, but I'm really into custom-made suits. And there's Savile Row in London, the street where all the famous, suit makers live, and their shop's hundreds of years old. And there was an African-British suit maker, Oswald Boateng, and he said something which, I don't know, whatever, sometimes some stuff just sticks in your mind. And he was like, when things were great, we were not getting fat. And we sort of kept lean. And I think it's kind of those in a business where it's a high margin, because it's, you're producing amazing quality, you're offering a great service, but still it's, the economy can change any minute. The world can change. I mean, pandemic can
has.
So
we saw that.
But if we touch on how have you pivoted, or how have you changed, how have you sort of tackled this, because I think there's a lot of lessons in there for other restaurateurs, for other chefs, for people in the industry and outside of the industry. Because like my personal interest in also talking to you has been, I love this industry. I'm not a chef. I don't work in the restaurant industry. I work in tech, but a lot of tech people love restaurants.
They do. I know a lot of tech people.
Exactly. You do, and we can get into it if you like. But I mean, for me, it was, I just kept seeing a couple, especially with the pandemic, all these wounds were opened up. The financial side of things, the hiring, I mean, everything. You can sort of see that the industry, as old as it is, hasn't moved forward. Hasn't sophisticated itself. And I just kept thinking, the tech isn't complicated here. We can come up with solutions for this. And I was talking to Susie about this in our backyard for an hour. And she was like, no, this wouldn't work. I'm like, but let's try it. I think now is the time to try stuff.
But I mean, so two things. First and foremost, when this started to happen, I sat down with the whole staff and I said, okay, in the past, we have often said in conversations about changing things or doing things that, that's not what we do here, or that's not in our DNA. And I said, those two sentences don't exist anymore. Now we need to be nimble. We need to be open to anything. And so that's having a printer and a fryer in the kitchen now that we thought I'd never have.
Exactly. I mean, it was, you've definitely modified. I mean, you've modified the kitchen. The restaurant looks different. I had
this conversation with Henry, who's running the wine bar now.
And
we have a POS system now. And we never had a POS system like we have there, with printers, and it's just more like tech integrated now, and going through that process of setting it up, I looked at Henry at one point and I was like, Henry, the fine dining world operates in the dark ages. Like you and I, everyone, we're operating at the higher echelons of the restaurant industry. But this is showing us now that there's a whole side of the industry that we have no clue about. And we're like archaic in how we run the restaurant.
We can come back to the pivot you made, but you said you know people in the tech industry. How did that come about, and what is that, and how much do you want to talk about that?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the tech industry, like you said, most people in the tech industry have some expendable income, so they like to eat out.
Exactly, yeah, we do.
And so through that, you always end up eating or meeting really interesting people, and some of those people become your investors. Some of those people just are there to support and have good advice, and it just seems like the tech industry loves the restaurant industry. But I also think I had a really interesting conversation with someone who's done a bunch of startups, and they're like, the restaurant industry feels like Silicon Valley in like the late 90s, mid 90s. And how it's like there's something bubbling there and it's about to explode, and that's what the restaurant, it's like this, because the restaurant industry has been operating in this like archaic ways, there's this opportunity to go in and just like make everything more efficient. And
I think like we have some mutual friends who are doing solutions for different aspects of the value chain. But I want to touch on Bowline for a second, because can you talk about that a little bit? Because we're talking about tech now, and there's some. Yeah. You launched some. You put something out recently.
Bowline. So Bowline was an amazing, very spontaneous thing. A restaurateur friend of mine. He's not a chef. He runs a wine bar and a restaurant. Reached out to me just during this whole thing, and it was really cool because he's Danish, and he had just started to reach out to me to make sure, me being American and an expat, that I was understanding all the information coming out in regards to stimulus packages, and he was just really worried. He didn't want me to miss anything, and he wanted me to understand, which was great. And then he and I started talking, and I had done a really cool thing on Zoom with myself and Amanda Cohen from Dirt Candy in New York. The two of us chefs, and then 15 consumers. So people that aren't in the industry, they just eat out. And we were given the opportunity just to ask them questions on what were their, when restaurants reopened, what were their biggest fears, what did they not care about, what did they care about, all this. It was a really informative session for myself and Amanda. And then so I was telling my friend Christian about this, and he's like, wow, we should do that. And then we said, okay, how do we set this up? And then we got Eric Guthey, who is an American who's a professor at CBS University in business. We got him involved because the three of us knew each other. And then we started talking about, okay, let's do a survey, and then use that survey as the basis for this Zoom conversation with consumers. And then, so then Eric got his students involved, because they're just, he has students that at the business school that just do surveys and design surveys and set them up. So then all of a sudden we had like 4 more chefs involved, 2 more restaurateurs, 1 from London, another professor from London University. All of a sudden we had this group of people, and all this happened within a week.
Amazing.
And then all of a sudden we sat down with these students, developed a survey, and literally sent it out. And all that happened within 2 weeks. And the thing that happens sometimes within the restaurant industry is that there's a lot of talk back and forth. Oh, let's do this and let's do this, and nothing really comes out of it. And I think the reason this within 72 hours, we had 4,700 people had done the survey.
Wow.
And the reason I think this had such a big impact is because it was raw. It wasn't like pretty, and it was just a way to get information from people, so we as restaurateurs and chefs could understand what we were going into.
And that sounds like a tech startup. That's like MVP or anything else you do in tech is like, let's just test it.
Yeah.
Let's put it out.
Yeah.
It's not going to look pretty, but we can improve it. If we're not going to stop.
Exactly.
This is the first try. Same thing with this podcast. Like it all came together so quickly, and I could say, oh yeah, maybe I should wait to buy the right equipment, or maybe whatever. No, let's get into it. Let's just
hold
start.
Your mic. Don't get a stand.
Exactly. Who needs a stand when you have hands, right? And have friends who want to help you and let you borrow the equipment and who want to help you film, and I mean, it's amazing. So
but I think we're now at a point, and I just got an email from Eric this morning because he's got more students that want to come on now. And we're at a point now where we kind of, all of us, the chefs and the restaurateurs in the group, we're like, okay, we're just opening. We need a couple weeks just to back off a little bit, and just because we need to focus on our restaurants and get those going. But I think week after next, we're all going to meet up again, because there's the next evolution of that. And we don't want to just keep putting out surveys because that'll get boring. But it's more, how do we, I think what they have done now is they've taken that survey and now distilled it into a format that's a bit more digestible. And now we are going to reach out to chefs who have used this survey to reopen their restaurants and have them write short kind of excerpts about what they've gone through and how they've used it and what their challenges have been. And then we'll kind of revisit, okay, what's the next step? Because what kind of lacks within the restaurant industry is a platform like Bowline to share information. And we want to make it open sourced, and we want people to be able to contribute to it. And
that was all those things that got me excited, because I'd spoken to Susie a week or two before you put it live, so around the same time I guess you were working on it. And I just said that there's all these things in the industry that are being controlled by these massive companies who don't have any reason to innovate. Like, just open source it. Like, it might not look as pretty, but at least it saves you money. And it might be right for you. We'll talk off air. I have some ideas, and be fun.
But I think what we're realizing quickly. I mean, Christian did the website and just threw it together, and I think, and he did a great job. And he's a design guy, so he loves to do that. But I think what we really need now, the next evolution, is to incorporate some, I think, deeper tech into it to get it to a wider audience and put it into a format where it's a bit more diverse and there can be outside influences. It's not just all I just got an email last night from a restaurant in Lithuania who's like, we love Bowline. It helped us so much. We want to launch Bowline in Lithuania now. And I think that's what our ultimate goal is, to be able to, because a very kind of distilled definition of what we wanted to do was be able to create this survey and then give it to other countries to put out in their own, because the demographics greatly affect the survey. And so Lisa Aubin just translated it into Spanish to send it to the Spanish chefs.
Nice.
So that's kind of where we're at.
But I mean, it's such a good initiative to start at this time, right? And let's get back to sort of how have you, I mean, this is one of the ways you're pivoting, or not pivoting, but adjusting to the current situation. But how are you doing it in the restaurant? Because there's some changes. AFC's launched. Finally, I'm super excited. I'm so excited about that.
I mean, what's crazy is that, like I was talking about before when we were walking around, a friend of mine asked me last fall, like, do you think you've grown out of the space? Do you think there's nothing more you can do in this space? And I looked at him, I said, no, there's more, but I don't know what it is. And then lo and behold, 4 months later, we are operating a tasting menu restaurant right in the same room, split by some shelves, as a fried chicken and natural wine bar. And it's like,
I mean, that fried chicken is as close to a religious experience with chicken that I've had in a long time, ever in my life.
I mean, we put some serious R&D into that
chicken. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I had it at Broden and Build a couple of months back, and I was, just serve this, only serve this.
You know what's crazy is that at Broden and Build, the most chickens we ever sold in a week was 240. We sold 817.
Wow.
And that's, I think, because of the space here. You have the space inside, but you have the massive garden, a terrace, when the weather's nice. And I love everyone was so afraid of, we're going to have people in here having tasting menus, and then there's going to be like a party going on in the garden. I said, yes. I love the opposite nature of that. People just, there's music in the garden, eating fried chicken in their no shirt on, sandals, just hanging out. And then you have people dressed nice.
It's almost full circle, right? Back to the guy smoking weed when you first opened up. It's kind of like now you just control it better.
There's definitely people smoking weed and eating fried chicken in the garden. I guarantee you that.
Welcome to Europe, baby.
Exactly. Maybe topless. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love but it took this extreme situation we're in for us to, or for me personally, to realize the potential of this space. And if you look around town, there's a lot of restaurants doing things outside of the norm. But I think the difference between what we're doing here and that is that this is permanent. We're not going back to the old Amass. For us, this is a permanent thing. We're doing tasting menus here, and we're serving fried chicken a half a meter away.
And amazing wine, and it's an evolution, right?
It's an evolution.
It's not a, and you don't know where you're going to go. You were mentioning something as well up there with the private dining space is going to be.
We're going to that's going to evolve into. It'll be a smaller private dining space, but then our research, and then eventually, probably this winter, Kim, who's head of R&D, will do maybe for 10 or 12 people, 10-course tasting menus based on only all of our new techniques and dishes that we're working on up there.
I'm gonna have to talk to you off air about that. give me a little spot.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's this again. We're in this awesome space, and there's all these murals on the wall. Mm. How did that come about? Like, where did the art come from?
So when I grew up around graffiti.
Okay.
And in that culture and
where did you grow up again?
San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah. And that was kind of the feel of the spaces. I grew up surfing, skating, snowboarding, listening to hip hop, and around graffiti. And it's like when we were designing this space, like I said, it was my wife and I who kind of sat here. We had a friend who she went to school for interior design, but then she was like designing furniture, and so she sat with us and did some sketches. We had no like computer drawings of the space before, and I said to my wife, I said, the best restaurants I've been to are where like the chef or the owner of the restaurant, it's like their personality is kind of in the room and you can feel it. And she's like, we can't put like graffiti and stuff on the wall, and if we want to play hip hop. And I was like, why not? And to back up my argument for that was that where we are now 7 years ago was way rougher, and there was graffiti everywhere out here. And I said, one thing, I think it's so weird sometimes when you walk into a restaurant where when you enter the restaurant, you leave the outside, and it's a completely different environment. And for me, I wanted the inside to be an extension of where we are because I love the area where we are. So why shun that away like it's not important? Why not bring it inside?
Yeah.
So a big part of that was just bringing the art that was outside inside. And
are these artists from outside of
so Henrik
Danish?
or Soten. He's become one of my best friends, and in Denmark he is, in the upper echelons of graffiti artists, and that's his job. He gets commissioned to fly around the world, and he lives between here and New York, and over the last couple years we change the art every year. So this is our 6th version of the room, which is cool because it's a fresh kind of new look every time you enter.
Awesome, yeah.
And this year there was 5 artists that painted this year in here from all over Europe.
Wow.
And was it, I think 2 years ago, one of the artists, his name was Insane51. I believe he is from Greece, and he did a piece over there that was posted on a graffiti website that had 1 million views.
Yeah, I remember walking in here. I was like, I've seen that piece, or I've shared it, or something.
And so he, all of a sudden, then Henrik started getting phone calls from graffiti artists all over the world wanting to come paint at Amass.
Wow.
So now it's like 5 different guys painted this year.
Yeah, because you have the train right there, and then.
So there is.
And for those of you who are only going to hear the podcast, come to Amass and check it out.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's hard. Yeah. So they paint together, and they come in and usually we close the home with February, so I just give them the keys and they go for it. And it's really embarrassing. This is actually my wife.
Oh wow!
Right here behind us. She doesn't want to admit that it's her.
Where is she?
That it is her. She's got bang short hair. It's her.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Really cool.
And yeah, it's just been a really cool process, and that's another. I've just also that, like when we went to, it was so cool. I went to Melbourne for the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival a couple of years, and I brought my wife and my daughter, and Henrik was like, you got to hook up with my friends, and they'll take you around and show you a bunch of cool walls in Melbourne, because the scene there is really cool. So we met up with one of the guys that Henrik paints with when he's in Australia, and we just hung out all day, had lunch, cruised around all these different murals, and
I mean, that's what I love about sort of graffiti and all these, I mean, graffiti, skateboarding, sort of these, I call them niche cultures that have become sort of, more mainstream now. I mean, when you meet these, I've worked with a lot of tattoo artists. There's a company called Tattoo down the road. I know the guys quite well. And when you meet artists of any kind, and chefs are artists as well, they're quirky. There's some things that are different about them.
Everyone's so open too.
But that's it.
Everyone wants to share, and everyone wants to show you, and everyone's just so cool. Like,
and I think that was to me sort of the big. That's why also I love the restaurant industry, because most chefs that I know, or most people in the industry that I know, are just nice people. Of course, there's assholes.
There are everywhere.
As there are everywhere. But I just haven't met that many of them, and that's also part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast, was that I want to have an excuse to catch up, with the people that I know who are kind enough to give me their time, and sort of talk about what they're up to, their challenges, what they're doing, and also just because I think we can all learn from each other at this time more than ever, because there's so many. I mean, like if the restaurant industry, the hotel services, entertainment has been hit the hardest in the pandemic, what can the rest of us learn from you guys? And what are you doing right now, who rest of us who thought, we're in tech, we build apps, we're untouchable. This pandemic hasn't proved that wrong. Apps are being downloaded more than ever, but the point is we need to learn from each other, because we're all connected, whether we like it or not.
We are connected,
right? So,
and if we're not connected, maybe we should be, because there are so many. What I've really come to appreciate, having my own restaurant and kind of operating in the sphere where we are, in regards to kind of sustainability and being a responsible business, is that crosses over industries. And I think some of the biggest inspiration I've gotten in regards to running Amass is from outside of the restaurant industry, and how people work, and people just thought processes on approaching different situations, and how they source different things. And I mean, I have such a great relation with Jesper, who owns Scareart. It's a furniture company, but is like how he sources his wood and all this is amazing. And just having those conversations, it makes you realize that the restaurant industry we don't have to be in a bubble.
No, we
can. It's okay to look up and look around and engage with other industries.
You said something, sustainability is sort of a word, and I really relate that to you a lot. That sort of how, and I mean, the restaurant industry as a whole is super unsustainable.
It's incredibly unsustainable.
So
incredibly.
So how did you go about doing, sort of thinking of sustainability in Amass, and how do you? And because we talked about it earlier. It's the core of Amass, or it's foundation of Amass.
It is. I mean, it is for us. It's about showing people that you can run a restaurant in an extremely responsible way without compromise. Yeah. And we talk
closer to the mic. Sorry.
We talk often about what do we impact is a big word that is a word that we use all the time, and how do we have the biggest impact on potentially not only our industry but other industries, and that's working in a responsible way and showing people that you can do this and not compromise, and in fact enhance the experience of your guests. I mean, we've created, through different techniques and stuff, we've taken byproducts that are generally discarded and thought of as not having zero value, and taken them and turned them into things that have crazy flavor that we could actually use and change the flavor profile of the food to have a profile that people haven't tasted before.
Yeah.
And I think, deliciousness is the driving factor. We'll never do something just because we could come up with the most efficient way to process the stems of cabbages.
Exactly. I don't need Amass Soylent, right? I'm fine. And no one needs that.
No, definitely. Because if we don't, what we talk about amongst the staff here is that you know, a lot of restaurants do things to get Michelin stars or get on lists and all this stuff. And that is not the driving force here. The driving force here is to create an experience, an exceptional experience, to prove to people that you can operate like this and not, like I said, compromise.
And I think what's interesting with that is there's a problem. The industry, sustainability, it's just the way it works. It's not good.
No.
And again, instead of sort of shying away from it and saying, okay, we're going to put it under the rug, you're like, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Can we develop new techniques? Can we develop stuff, you know, within the restaurant to improve taste, to make things better, faster, more efficient, more effective?
The bigger problem, though, is that people are now using this to greenwash themselves.
Now, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, was because I appreciate people who talk their mind and stop hiding behind the bullshit veneer of sort of, you know, oh yeah, I can't say this because people aren't going to show up. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Like if they're not going to show up, then they were never coming for you anyway.
No, exactly.
So, a couple of things on this. First of all, the greenwashing part is, I mean, my family business is in Ayurveda, natural medicine.
Yeah.
There's only greenwashing. It's like everything is organic, natural, pure. L'Oreal has nothing that's organic or natural or pure. That's bullshit. But that's another episode, another time.
Yeah.
Talk about greenwashing and before we get into that, I think you put up a post on Instagram or you said it somewhere about the world 50 best people and sort of how they.
Well, it was multiple outlets.
Sorry, like I mean, don't worry. I don't. All these outlets is sort of who have kind of not left you hanging but something along those lines.
Yeah.
And that was to me a very apt opinion, and I'd love to get into that as well. Like how do you see that went? And I mean,
well, we can talk about the greenwashing first.
Sure.
I mean, greenwashing happens all the time,
of course,
across industries. When it happens in the restaurant industry, obviously it affects me and frustrates me more than any, because the thing is that there are people out there that are really doing this, that are putting because it takes a lot of effort, because it's not the norm. Anything you're doing that's not the norm takes more effort. And for people who are not really doing it to come out and say they're doing it, it just discredits and devalues everything that the people that are doing. And I mean, Doug McMaster from Silo, he is really, really doing it. Christian Puglisi, the guys at Nola up in Finland. Like these are restaurants that are doing it. And then you have restaurants, which I won't mention, that are just blabbing out, hashtagging sustainability, hashtagging this, and then all of a sudden, and the consumers are blind to what's really happening. And all of a sudden this best sustainable restaurant in the world, and you're like, you're a 3 Michelin star restaurant operating in the Alps. Like, how are you the most? Tell me why. And that was why I had a huge rift back and forth with the top 50, because we got an email. It's like, oh, you were second most sustainable restaurant in the world. I was like, well, tell me why they were.
What's the criteria?
Because not because I'm mad I didn't win, because if they really are, then I want that information so I can improve myself. Nothing.
Yeah.
But I would say, we can move on to that. The post that I put up about these different outlets, about how I said, listen,
there's many. Yeah, you're right.
There's many outlets that I mentioned in that post, and I just said, no, where are you guys? You don't exist unless we exist. You feed off of us, and now we are so vulnerable right now. Where are you? Like, what? This just proves that you don't really care, or at least you don't understand this industry, if you're just standing back and letting us all just like potentially wither up and die.
And I think what's interesting is the bloggers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the bloggers have been, buy local, support local. There's also an initiative you're part of starting, sort of around support local stuff. I think that's kind of been something that's come out of it was very positive, because I think a lot of people who have a following on social media have sort of taken it upon themselves. Yeah. And some of these media outlets have also done that. But you're right. I think this is a bigger question to go after, because
I will add, though, I put that post out, and maybe a week later, the head of the top 50 called me. And she basically said, Matt, you're right. We messed up.
Well, that's cool.
And that was positive. And she said, help us. What do we do? How do we help you guys? We don't know. And so we talked for an hour and a half. And now they're doing it. And literally everything we talked about, they're executing in some way, which I will give them a lot of credit for that, because they showed vulnerability. They reached out. They wanted to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And now they're doing it, which is great. I mean, I don't think many other lists are doing that. I think they kind of pulled back, and especially this opinionated about dining.
Yeah.
Horrible list. Based in just vanity and no substance.
Which one is that? Sorry? What?
Opinionated about dining.
Okay.
I have no problem saying that because I can't stand it. It is just, yeah.
And I mean, to me, that's the other thing, right? Because you said something which was honest and open, and you know, people are going to say, okay, he's one of the best chefs in the world. I'll say it. He has one of the best restaurants in the world. I'll say that. I've eaten in a few of them. I think yours is, personally. And then for you to go out on the limb and say something like that opens it up to a lot of criticism as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we got criticism,
of
definitely.
Course.
And that's fine. And I think if you say something and you don't get criticism, then you haven't really
pushed enough.
Poked the bear enough.
Because I think that's also what's needed for, and that's why, again, I know the tech world. In tech, you're constantly criticized.
Yeah.
You have to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know.
That's how you improve.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, you know, nobody needs a better version of anything.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, we're all screwed.
Yeah.
Because the whole foundation, it's evolution, right? You have to move forward.
Yeah.
You have to get better. You have to learn. You can't just say the way business was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 50 years ago is the same as today.
Yeah.
We're learning. We're getting better. I mean, what's happening in the world 2020 has been such a crazy year. I mean,
2020, everyone keeps saying, "Oh, it's a throwaway year."
Yeah, but and
but
I
maybe
think
it's not.
I think that's what I think.
Sorry.
No worries. I think there's this dichotomy, right, where it's, I mean, in anything good, like everything is super hard right before you elevate a level.
Yeah.
Right, like right before you. I mean, if you're a gamer or anything, it's like, or in anything in life, right?
Yeah.
It's tough as hell. And then the next day you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a bit better. I'm a bit stronger.
Oh, I mean, everyone in the restaurant industry is going to be stronger on the backside of this.
And I'm gonna be talking to a lot of people from the restaurant industry as well. And you're the first one, so the bar is pretty high. But there's gonna be, and I mean, there's so much in this space to talk about, because it's been sort of behind closed doors.
Yeah.
For a very long time.
Complete. And I think I mean, there's multiple positive things that can come out of this, but I think one thing that I've talked about a lot and realized is that maybe this also, I mean, in the industry, the restaurant industry, there's this just common misconception that if you have a successful restaurant, you make a lot of money. Generally, the more exposure you have, the more high end you are, the more, or whatever, the more you're on these lists and stuff, the less money you make. Yeah. Because it costs so much money to run a restaurant.
Yeah. Could we talk a bit more about that? And then we have a few minutes left before you got to go. But how do the finances work? And just in general?
So I'll explain how they work in Denmark.
Got it.
Unless you are Noma or say Geranium and you're booked 6 months out, it works like this. You make all your money in the summer, which is quite lucrative, to get you through the winter, because it just gets colder and darker and less people come out. There's less people coming here as tourists and stuff like that. Not that we even have any tourists this year, but that is how it works. So you make your money November, December, January, February, March, maybe in April a little bit. You either break even or you lose money, but you've banked the money. And then you basically your bank account is not empty, but not full by the end of the winter.
Yeah. So is it, would you say, because I think I heard some numbers, doing some research for this chat, about sort of, the high-end restaurants being 17% margin or 20% or 15%. And maybe those numbers are different, but to me, I was just like, wait a minute. We will, I mean, in other consumer good companies, and there's a lot of them, 400% is an average margin.
Yeah. We're talking like between 14 and 20%.
Yeah. And I think of course that's the industry. That's what you're doing. You're serving high quality experiences to people. So of course that costs a lot. But to me it was just shocking, like 14 to 20%.
But this is a whole much longer conversation to have, but restaurants don't charge what they should charge. And that's the thing. And if we were really charging what we should be charging based on the amount of staff we have, based on the cost of goods, we should be charging triple. People should be paying 2,000 krona to eat at Amass, not 625 krona.
Yeah.
But we've maybe created it for ourselves, but I think it just is a larger conversation about people not valuing the cost of food. Food being the thing that keeps you alive.
Yeah.
And the amount of income that people spend on food is minimal. I mean, people should be spending 50% on food, not 15, 20. But that just, it's a larger arcing problem in society that people don't value food. And especially in restaurants, they don't value the cost of what it takes to make an experience like this.
Matt, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've already been very kind, but we should do this again and get a little deeper into something.
Definitely.
Thank you for inviting us in.
You're welcome.
And showing us around, and I'll let you get to work.
Thank you.
But where can people find you? Where should they check out something about you?
AmassRestaurant.com.
Okay,
Hit us up. Come for fried chicken if you don't want to come for the
I'm coming.
experience.
I'm in. I'll be there.
Just come see the new Amass and kind of feel the new energy, and come sit in the garden. And
awesome. Thanks so much, Matt.
You're welcome.
Have a good day. Thank you.
How was that? Good. Yeah. Great. Yeah. No, I love. Like I said.